I feel like most of the entrepreneurship advice out there given is wrong, right?
Mhm.
It's all written by like single dudes with no families. They got no responsibilities. And I can't relate to that, right?
Mm.
Because I got a family, I got responsibilities. And they're all preaching that you got to hustle and work 80 hours a week and whatnot. And
Mhm.
then scale, scale, scale. That's the general message.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that way. You don't
Mhm.
have to work 8 hours a week. You can run a successful business and have the time to follow your daughter around watching her
Mhm.
volleyball,
Right.
right?
Right.
Or coach your teams, which is what I do also.
Yep.
So yeah, I think there's a big gap.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Brand podcast. And I have a very, very special guest, and I can't wait to dive in. I'm just going to kind of dive in. Steve Chou, what is up? My friend, my guy I inspire to be like, because now you're writing books and you're talking about family first and all this stuff that I love. What's up, man? How you doing?
Dude, so happy to be here, Scott. I feel like I've known you forever, and I'm thrilled that you are coming to Seller Summit this year. It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, that was a little bit of a twisting arm, and it was tough. And the reason why it was tough, Steve, and but really, man, I mean, I've just been hardcore into my daughter's volleyball career. She's a beach volleyball player. And you and I know we share the same interest. That's what we'll be talking about here today is, as far as like, how do you build a business, but then also keep family first, and that's really kind of what your book's all about, which we're going to talk about. But yeah, man. And I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any events going on that week because I didn't want to have to cancel. And it's funny because I went ahead and I booked the flight without even telling you. And I'm like, well, if I book it and I find out, I can always cancel it. Steve doesn't know. That's the true story. True story. And then I finally committed and I got my hotel room. So I'm coming. Yeah.
So I know how you feel because my daughter's playing club volleyball. Every single weekend, there's a tournament, like a travel tournament, where we have to go somewhere. It's not during the week, though. So
no,
yeah,
but there's practices during the week. And
correct.
If you're in club, and my daughter did club, and that it's a whole nother experience. But yeah, it's traveling 4, 5, 6 hours away. Sometimes they're flying across the country, depending on what level you're going to. With beach, it's different. You're kind of independent. You're with a club. You can be, you don't have to be, but then it's really independent and it's only 2 players. So if you're with a partner, you and your partner don't really do well together. You don't like each other after the first time. You can say, bye, I'm going to go find a new partner.
Yep.
So it's pretty cool. But anyway, let's dig in. I was thinking about it when you and I were setting this thing up. I'm like, what I really want to dive into is how do you balance like wanting to be successful, wanting to start your own thing. Like a lot of people listening right now are trying to start their own thing, and it could have been after the pandemic or whatever. But like right now, like the state of the world, like where we're at, recession, all of that stuff. My question to you is it still possible for someone to start online and build a sustainable business that they could spend more time with their family and put their family first?
I mean, I think it's more important than ever, to be honest with you. Like where I live right now in the Silicon Valley, there's mass layoffs. Google, Facebook, Amazon, huge layoffs, and a lot of people are out of jobs. And when there's mass layoffs, it's actually really hard to get another job because all of a sudden you have like 30,000 people looking for a job at the same time. I really believe that you got to dig your well before you're thirsty. So just start a side hustle. It doesn't have to be anything big in the beginning, but just make sure you have some just sort of side income coming in that could potentially make you life-changing money. So in the event that something happens, you have something to fall back on. And I think every single person should be doing that. I think we're in this recession we're going to be in this for a little bit. And when you have more free time, just do something that you're interested in. Like I have students in my class, they just make a YouTube channel on whatever they're interested in. And they're just doing it for fun. It's not really work for them. And, who knows, maybe a year later, it might make significant money.
Yeah. We hear that, and sometimes it's conflicting where we hear people out there, they're like, don't go after your passion, go after where the money is. It's like, and I think I was like that like years ago when I was younger and kind of naive and all of that. But I think it's more important now than ever to go after something that you're at least interested in, because I think you would probably attest to this. You're probably not going to be successful out of the gate, right? It's like, how do you keep yourself motivated? like digging your well before you're thirsty. Love that. But how do you dig a well if you're not seeing even a little bit of water? Right. I think that's a struggle for a lot of people.
So my philosophy is everything's going to take time. I don't actually take on anything unless I'm willing to commit to it for at least 3 years. That's actually my thing.
Yeah.
Let's just give you an example. I started taking YouTube seriously 3 years ago. And when I started publishing videos, nothing. But I knew that if I continued on, it would do well. And 3 years later, just on AdSense revenue, it's going to do probably like $300,000 just on AdSense, right? The way I do it is if I'm going to do a video a week, like I'm committed to it, I set aside that block in my schedule so that it just kind of becomes my routine. Like I literally can maintain my pace right now forever and not even blink. And that's the way you got to think about it.
I mean, how long have you been blogging now? I mean, and I say blogging, like people are like, blogging, that's dead, isn't it? Like, how long have you been writing content for your website? Let's say that it's still blogging, but let's just,
how long? 14 years.
14 years.
Yeah.
How long before you actually saw any type of return on that content?
2 years.
2 years. How many times were you posting?
Okay. So at first I wasn't following my philosophies because this was back then. I didn't have any philosophies. I was blogging 5 times a week in the beginning. I burned myself out after a month. And then I just dropped down to a pace that I could maintain, which at the time was once a week. I was working full time. And I suppose if I wrote more often, I could have gotten there sooner. But once a week was the pace that I could maintain forever. And at the 3-year mark was that I made enough to replace my salary. And again, I don't do anything.
That was a 3-year?
At the 3-year mark, that's correct.
3-year mark?
Yeah.
How was the revenue coming in from that?
Yeah. So at the time, it was just ads and affiliate revenue. I didn't have
ads.
a class.
You had like AdSense running on the site?
AdSense running on the site. There was no Mediavine or anything like that back then. And then I just had affiliate offers, and I was just reviewing the tools that I was using for my e-commerce store. Okay.
And that's pretty typical. I mean, that's kind of what we've all been taught and everything, and we've done, and it definitely works. So you're going through that process. Was there any time that you were going through that process that you're like, yeah, I'm just going to stop?
I never thought about stopping, but I was like, hey, when's this money going to come? When's this money going to come? And I think this is where, if you're in a mastermind group, it really helps. Because as long as you're seeing someone else that's doing what you're doing and being successful at it, you have the confidence that it eventually will happen, even if it's not happening just yet.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's like almost like the 4-minute mile. Like no one thought it could be done, then it was done. And what was it? John Reese did $1 million launch, and then everyone else starts doing $1 million launches. Like it's like the thing that couldn't be done is now being done, and especially if someone that is doing it. And it's funny, like even to this day, like all these years later, like I started probably similar time to you, like 15 years ago, but even recently, you with your YouTube channel, it lit something under me that I'm like, I gotta get into this. Like, number one, I don't like writing. I think you know that, right? I'm not a good writer. I'm not a good typer, like all of that stuff. Like I'm not good at that. I'm better at this, audio or visual. Like I can jump on and we can jam and everything's cool. And so once I saw you having some success, I'm like, Scott, come on. That's your wheelhouse. That's where you got to go. And ever since I did that, it's probably been about 6 months. I have seen tremendous growth on that channel. I think since I started that 6 months ago, I think I had 28,000 subscribers. We're just going to cross 60,000 right now.
Dude, that's amazing, man. And I told you this in text. I said, dude, this is your medium, man. If anyone should do this, it should be you.
You absolutely did. And I don't know why I didn't listen. I mean, I guess we don't, but I started seeing your results, and you were just posting little shots on Instagram or, on Facebook or whatever. And you're like, showing like YouTube was like, you're up 1,000% or something like that. And I'm like, dude, like, what is he doing? And then I would message you and then that encouraged me. But I just want people to realize, like, even though you might see someone and they're like at the top of the game, or at least you think, there's always struggles. There's always internal things that they're dealing with, or that they're trying to climb the next mountain. And I think that's the next thing I really want to talk about, because you and Jackness Mike Jackness, and anyone doesn't know, you guys did an interview, and I really want to dig into that a little bit of what you guys were talking about, because I think when people are, number one, starting, they're like, if I could just get there to $1,000 a month, if I could just get there to $10,000 a month, everything will be great. And then you get there and you realize, wow, it was a lot of work to get there and to maintain this. I'm doing things I don't really like to do or that are consuming my time, and I don't want to be this busy. Let's dig into that a little bit. Like, how do you balance that? How do you balance that, Steve?
So let me just tell you guys a couple stories first. So our e-commerce store, when we launched, we didn't think anything of it, but we hit 6 figures in profit in our first year. And then that got me all excited.
Sure.
So what I started doing was I started setting these ridiculous income goals. Like, hey, let's try to grow 100% this year. We hit that. We hit $1 million. I was like, okay, let's try to go for 30% growth. And after a while, I didn't realize this, but I started driving my wife crazy. And I actually wasn't really being present with my family. And the whole reason we started that business in the first place, I mean, the blog's called My Wife Quit Her Job. We did that so that we could spend more time with family, but all of a sudden our business was taking us away from that. And it was only after my wife actually broke down. She was like, I don't want to do this anymore. This business sucks. We're frugal. Like, Scott, you always make fun of me for being cheap, right? I am cheap. I don't spend that much money. And here we are making many times what we earn, but we're still trying to grow this revenue pool. And it just didn't make any sense. And I burned my wife out totally. I think what most people don't realize is that sudden growth actually really sucks. There was this time when we hit the Today Show, and you would think that that'd be like the holy grail, right? We had 7x our daily order volume, and that kept up for like 2 weeks. And it was just me, my wife, and one worker. And I was thrilled that we got those sales, but fulfilling those sales was probably the most painful, really painful part in my memory running that business.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't know if you've heard of Justin Welsh. Have you heard of him on Twitter? He's on Twitter, big on Twitter and LinkedIn. And I don't know how I stumbled. I know how I stumbled on him. This is interesting. You're going to love this. So Noah Kagan, you were just on his episode. We did an interview a long time ago. I love him with his new, his not even his new channel. He's repositioned his channel a little bit on YouTube and stuff. It's really cool. And he's just funny. But he had a few guys on, and girls, I think, that were running a business that was doing 7 figures, like $1 million, maybe $2 million a year, but they had no employees. And so that was his like hook, right? And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to listen to this one. I want to hear more about this. And it introduced me to this Justin Welsh guy. And so all he does is he's on LinkedIn, and basically he grew his LinkedIn, but he was actually in the help profession for SaaS. And he was helping companies grow. Like, he started a company to help them grow. He went from like 0 employees to like 140 employees. It was like, $50 million, per month company, big, massive SaaS. But he got burnt out, wanted to leave that. And then I want to go solo. I want to go solopreneur. And so that's his whole thing. And so, as I was listening to him, he had said one thing that really, really resonated with me. And someone was like, you're doing really well. You're working, as many hours as you want to work, but you might only want to work 4 or 6. But he's like, I like it, what I'm doing. So I'll work 6, 7 hours if I want to. But he's like, someone said to me, they go, well, you did 2 million last year. Why don't you do this and this and this, and you can get to 4 million? And he's like, no, actually, that's not how I want to scale. The way I want to scale is I want to still make 2 million, but I want to actually automate more things and do less. That's how I'm scaling. I don't need to make more money. I keep it 2 million, right? I'm good with that. He's like, I just want to maintain the 2 million and be able to work less or do less things that I don't want to do. So I thought that was an interesting take. So for you, is it always about growing the revenue to say I did 2 this year, 4 years, 6 next year? Or is it more of just like making it actually easier to make that money?
No, we stopped revenue goals ages ago.
Okay.
It's not about revenue at all anymore. And I actually believe in robots, not humans. We're actually in a great age right now, right? With AI and ChatGPT, this is like the ideal time to do all this stuff. But I've been automating stuff for years. Here's what I come to realize. I used to be an engineering director, and I had a lot of reports under me, and they were fantastic workers. But what most people don't realize when you have a large team is that there's all these personality issues and psychological issues that you have to deal with that have nothing to do with work. And that's overhead that people don't consider. One of my pet peeves is sometimes I'll go to an event and people will ask me, "Hey, how large is your team?"
Yeah.
Implying that the size of your team is a measure of your success. I
Right.
think of it as the opposite. Like, I don't want any employees if I can
Right.
help it.
Right.
So I try to automate as much as I can, and the things that can't be automated, then I'll hire somebody. But I've never wanted to have a large team ever.
Yeah, I know. I think there was a time that it was you, me, Jackness, and Mercer, Greg Mercer, up on stage, and we were asked that question, something about teams and all of this stuff. And Greg's got a team of over, at the time it was like 100 employees at the time, which started from nothing, by the way. I mean, his story is remarkable. Love Greg. And Jackness was like, yeah, we've got 10 or 15 or 20 or whatever. Like, he's kind of in that small to mid. And you and I are like, I have no desire to have a big team.
Yeah. I was like, I got one person.
Yeah. I got one. I got like a VA, a couple VAs, like whatever, right? And I mean, like right now, like I'm so lean. I'm proud to be lean as far as like my team, right? Like I'm very, very lean. And actually, I've tried to like even incorporate like my son now, like Scotty, like he does all my video, right? So I'd rather pay him. He's learning a skill. He loves it. And who knows where that's going to take him, right? Because now he's learning all this video stuff. So he's doing all my video stuff. And that's my team. You know what I mean? Like, I'm actually proud of saying like I've got less employees than someone else that's got, well, I've got 100 employees and I'm in charge of all of them. I'm like, oh, that sounds like a nightmare to me. Right.
What's funny is I'm a member of a number of mastermind groups. And I remember there was this one guy, he really wanted to hit 7 figures. At the time he was at a mid 6-figure profit. And so he wanted to hit 7 figures. So he grew this team to he like tripled his team or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
He ended up hitting $1 million. But then when you looked back, he was actually making less profit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he hit his
more
goal.
Headaches.
Yeah. And more headaches too, I'm sure. Yeah.
So it's whenever I hear about like more things, I hear complexity, I hear other people's problems. I have to coordinate. Like, I'm like, I just want to stay small. And yes, I want to make enough money to provide for my family and do the things I want to do. And yes, invest and do all of those things. But in the same breath, it's not always about trying to just have this trophy of like, I hit this number. And I think that can be a trap online, to be honest with you.
I think that's the hardest. That's the hardest part about this whole thing is dealing with your ego, really. Mm-hmm. Like, especially if you're in a number of mastermind groups where you're just seeing all of these other people killing it. You want to do that too. And it's an ego thing. And it's really hard for me. There's this group that I belong to. It's called the Mayfield Fellows Club. It's from Stanford. And there's all these people there. It's meant to be like you follow a VC and your goal is to start like the next venture-backed company. Okay. And there's this yearly retreat that I go to. And we always go around and tell each other what we're up to. And like this guy will go up and say, hey, I just had a $400 million exit. Kevin Systrom is in that group of Instagram.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going up and I was like, yeah, I'm selling handkerchiefs and I'm blogging. It's really, it hurts the ego. So the way I overcome that, and I have an ego, I mean, it can't be helped, is now I just focus all my energy on one thing every year. And whatever happens, happens. But I'm constantly learning every single year. So this year it's about the book. Last year it was YouTube. The year before it was like TikTok, whatnot. And that's what keeps me interested.
Let's talk about that real quick, because I think that's an interesting thing to do. It actually probably would relieve a lot of pressure and stress. How do you decide on what you want to focus on? Because you could say, well, I can grow my traffic numbers, but how do I know that's going to make me more money? Right? Like, so where do you decide what that's going to be? Right? And how do you get rid of the distractions, the things that are saying, Steve, you should be doing this, or, oh, look at this person, they're crushing it on this. And how do you get away from that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned kind of earlier, like I don't take on anything new unless I have like a schedule for it. Okay. So like my slot for YouTube right now is Monday. I do all my filming and then I'm done. Okay. And I don't do anything else the rest of the week. So when choosing which project that I'm going to take on, it really what excites me. Like I'm really excited about AI. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do this year, as soon as this whole book launch is over with and Seller Summit, is I'm going to play around with the API for OpenAI and I'm going to write SteveBot. I'm going to literally transcribe all the videos in my class, everything, and then program a bot that is me, has my knowledge, and that'll be like my first line of defense for questions from my class.
Oh,
right.
Very cool. But that's because you also, you have the brain power to do that. I mean, that's your background. I mean, you're in coding and stuff, right?
I mean, it is, but you can actually ask ChatGPT to code it for you, right? I mean, there's no excuse anymore, right? You can, I think if you really want to, you can learn how to do it now. But yeah, you're right. It is my background. That's correct. I feel comfortable with it.
So, all right. You wrote this book. What was the inspiration for you to write the book? Let's talk about that. And then I do want to ask you a couple of other questions that I think would definitely help the audience, give them some action steps on what they can do in today's new age of AI and all of that stuff. But what was the inspiration for you to write the book? Because it's been a lot of work. You've been at it for 3 years, I think you said.
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, the main reason I wrote the book is because I feel like most of the entrepreneurship advice out there given is wrong, right? Mm-hmm. It's all written by like single dudes with no families. They got no responsibilities. And I can't relate to that, right? Because I got a family, I got responsibilities. And they're all preaching that you got to hustle and work 80 hours a week and whatnot. And then scale, scale, scale. That's the general message.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm about. And I wrote the book to just educate people that it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to work 8 hours a week. You can run a successful business and have the time to follow your daughter around watching her volleyball. Right. Or coach your teams, which is what I do also. Yep. So yeah, I think there's a big gap. I think and look around, seriously, every entrepreneur out there who's preaching this stuff, they're all single guys, right? For the most part, 90%.
Yeah. No, and it's not relatable because again, it's like, you're always seeing the guys with the Lamborghinis and, all of that stuff, right? It's all clickbaity and stuff like that. And I'm with you, man. I'm the opposite of that. Like, I don't need the Lamborghini, I'm fine with my Jeep that I got, I'm cool, so I'm like enjoying what I have. And it's not about the material stuff. Maybe when I was younger, it might've been, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, I was a kid. I was, I was into cars and stuff like that. So maybe it was, but that's just not who I am now. And it's not who you are. And I think you're just trying to call it out to the people that are like you and I, which there's a lot of us out there.
Definitely. In fact, most people don't start successful businesses until like they're 30 or 40. Right. So there's like this huge audience. Like, I want to learn from someone who has a family, honestly, because then I know that they have a good balance between business and life.
Yeah. So I guess the question there would be for someone because I know myself, and this is a challenge, is like, I'm sold. I'm going to go ahead and build an online business of some kind, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's a YouTube channel, like whatever, right? Like, I'm going to go all in on that. It starts to consume you as far as like, if I'm not working on that, then I'm not pushing it. And I'm just like doing my 1 or 2 hours and say, oh, I did my work. I'm going to, hopefully it grows. I'm like, well, if I got downtime, I'm going to be doing something, right? Like, I feel like if I'm not working on it, I'm not actually helping it grow. How do you do that at an early stage and still keep the family happy and you're excited, but yet you're still energized enough to keep at it and stay motivated?
I mean, it's all about making it a part of your routine. I know how you feel about that. Like, when I started my YouTube channel, like, I wanted to start out doing more. Actually, let's take a step back. I actually wanted to start a YouTube channel for almost a decade now, but I didn't. I only just recently started in the last 3 years. And the reason was because it's a lot of work, right? Like, before, I didn't have a setup in place. And so I would have to spend 20 minutes setting up the lights and everything. And then I didn't know how to edit and anything like that. So what convinced me to actually start the channel was I learned how to edit, and it was really painful. But then I documented all that using Loom, or I used Camtasia, I can't remember which. And then I found an editor in the Philippines who ended up being very inexpensive. And I had this process down where I could just pump out a video literally in like 20 minutes. And it was only after I had that system in place did I say, hey, okay, I'm going to go all in on this. Because I have a system now to do it very quickly. So what you were saying is, like, I don't take on anything unless I can fit it into my routine. And so these videos, now it's not a big deal for me to pump those out. I got a teleprompter. I got the camera right here. I got my setup. I just hit a button and then I record. And so I don't really have those feelings, and whatever happens, happens. And I just try to refine my video each time I publish one and just make it a little bit better. And then over time, things will grow.
Yeah. So let's talk about that real quick, because I think being prepared for that time is also very important, right? And like you said, like you have a setup now, so you got rid of that excuse, because a lot of times people are getting going. They're like, well, I want to shoot videos, but I got to set my lights up, or the lighting isn't good, or I have to set up the mic or whatever, right? And then that makes it where it takes time to do that. And what you've done is you've created an environment that's all done, but you really have to prepare before you hit record. So it sounds like you're preparing the video and all of that stuff. So all you need to do is sit down, press record, and you're off to the races. But it probably didn't start that way either.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't actually publish my first video until I had that system in place. Because if I had launched my channel when it was super painful, like it takes me about 4 to 6 hours to edit a video myself. If I'd started during that time, I probably would have burnt out and stopped.
Yeah.
I didn't actually launch the channel until I had a bunch of episodes in the bank and I had an editor in place. So I knew I could maintain that forever. If you start before you have the systems, which is what a lot of people do, then burnout is very likely.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So just a little bit more on YouTube, because I know that you're a fan now, and I'm a fan because we've seen like growth. What would you say to someone that was thinking about going down that road to build an audience, to then monetize that audience? I know not all niches are going to be as profitable, right?
Sure.
As far as ad revenue goes. What kind of advice would you, now going back to what you've done to where you are right now, and someone wasn't in the how to make money niche, like where would you, what would you tell them?
So number one, pick a pace that you can maintain forever. And in terms of topic, I would not necessarily choose something that you're passionate about, but something that you're knowledgeable about, right? So let's say I didn't do making money. There's a number of things I could create videos on. I could talk about ultimate frisbee. That's one of my passions.
Okay.
I could talk about anything related to engineering. Heck, maybe I could start like an AI channel, once I get into all this stuff. And the reason why I say that is because if you're passionate about something, you might not be passionate about it later on, right? But if it's something that you have knowledge about, then you'll have like endless content to write about. I always think about the analogy, like, when like you first fall in love with someone, there's like all this passion, but then once it fades away, a lot of times people break up with it. The same is true in business. Passion can kind of fade, but what you're good at and what you're knowledgeable about will kind of never fade, and you'll have endless content to write about.
Yeah. So what you're telling me is you're like a relationship coach now. Like, so how do you keep that passion alive in your marriage? How long have you been married now? It's over 15 years, right?
This year's our 20-year anniversary.
20 year, right?
Yeah.
So how do you keep the passion alive, Steve? Come on, that's a real question.
It's a real question. And I'll be honest with you. I think like in marriage, like that initial passion tends to fade over time, right?
Sure.
And
you get used to each other. You get, it's complacent and all that. Yeah.
And what's really important is that you have the same values. So in our case, we have the same values in raising our children, the same values about money, and just the same overall like cultural values.
Sure.
And I can say this about my wife. She is easily the most considerate person I've ever met. So I respect everything that she does. I know that all of her intentions are always going to be good. And that's why we've been married for so long.
Yeah. No, I agree. You have to be aligned for sure. And I think a lot of times when someone is an entrepreneur and their wife or significant other isn't, that can be a problem, right? Because you don't see the vision and stuff, but it's almost like you almost know that early on. I mean, gosh, when, Lisa and I got married years ago, we're going on 28 years.
Wow.
Actually 29.
Dang.
29. This year will be 29, Steve, because my daughter's going to be 28. So I know that it's a year more than that. So 29. Yeah. And so from the beginning, her and I have been kind of side hustling. You know what I mean? From day one. I mean, I remember her mother owned in her basement had a little ceramic shop with like kilns and everything. And she used to have a ceramic class. So Lisa, my wife, bought these molds with these little melting pot little molds where you would pour them and then we would fire them and then she would go ahead and paint them. And they would have like one of those little scented little things on top there, little things that melt. You put a little tea light in the bottom and it lights and it melts and all that stuff. We'd bring them to a craft fair and we would sell those on the weekend, right? So she'd spend 3 weeks making these things. And then we'd go there and make $150. And we were happy. Like, great. We get to, go out to dinner, whatever, do some things on the house if we wanted to, like whatever at that level. I mean, we were newly married, but it's just like, I knew back then that we were right for each other just because we were so in line with that. Like you said, the values, upbringing, all of that stuff. So I think that's important. But again, this isn't an episode on relationships. But we have been married a long time.
We have. Yeah.
I mean, so I think we're doing something okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't foresee it ever. It's been great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing I would say is just, you pick your battles, right? You just pick your battles and, a lot of times you might just be like, okay, I'll go with that. It's like, you can accept it, but things that you aren't, then, there's a back and forth. So there's a lot of give and take, I think. All right. So let's wrap up. But what I wanted to really give people, there's two things. One is I want to give people, like, if you were to advise a friend of yours, they came to you, they're like, Steve, I'm at this corporate job. I've been there for 15 years. And I know that they're either going to get rid of us soon or I want an out. What is your advice to that person?
So it's really tough. It just depends on your time frame for money. So if you want to make money within a year, I would say selling something is the way to go, or services, right? So e-commerce or just selling some services and whatnot and establish that foothold. Mm-hmm. If your time frame is like 3 years, 2 to 3 years or longer, then I think content and building an audience is the way to go. And it doesn't really matter what the medium is. It could be blogging, podcasting, or YouTube, mm-hmm. or TikTok, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. If you have a longer time frame, if you consistently put out content, let's say on like a weekly basis, eventually good things will happen. And you just have to have that faith. Like people who follow you, Scott, know that, it took us a long time to get established, but once you do get established, mm-hmm. literally the revenue just hockey sticks. Mm-hmm. So that's my advice.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that. Because I think audience building is probably the number one skill that someone should learn. And there's all different ways to do it, but audience building, meaning it could be email list, which is, you and I are big believers in email, but it's really getting the attention and getting people to know, like, and trust you over time. And it's not really just, you have to make money on day one. If you can get rid of I need to make money on day one and put out genuine like content and be authentic, good things will happen. I mean, it's happened for you. It's happened for me. And in several different cases, right? Like I can trace it all the way back to when we were in our photography business, my wife and we were just building up a local, following in a sense. Like we literally had a following for our little, studio that we were competing with one of the bigger names, and people came to us because they liked us and because we did good work. Right. And then that translated into the online space where I started building my first, Photoshop tutorial training little course, and I was teaching people on YouTube all the way back then. And that turned into a 6-figure business pretty quickly, which actually changed our life forever on that one. But it all came from the audience, right? And so I'm so glad that you said that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it just takes time. And like you said, if you've got a year, then you probably need to get something into the ecosystem of like where someone can make a transaction with you.
Right. Yep.
What's your thoughts on like a print on demand instead of even doing like going overseas and doing the whole private labeling and all of that stuff, starting with like print on demand?
I love print on demand because actually my kids started a print on demand business when they were 9 and 11 years old.
Yes, I know that.
Kidincharge.com, awesome. And they were selling entrepreneurship t-shirts for kids, and they made $1,000 in their first month.
That's amazing.
It's what I call like a good gateway drug, actually, to e-commerce, because it costs literally zero money to start. Yeah. You can dip your toes in the water, use your creativity to create designs. And there's like AI now, like Midjourney, where you can actually, you don't even have to be an artist.
I know.
You can just create the art on the fly and sell merchandise with it. So I love print on demand. I don't think it's going to make you life-changing money. I mean, it could, but I think the likelihood is small. But it will, like I said, it's a gateway drug into something bigger, because you got to start somewhere.
And I think, like you said, like if you build the audience, like to me, like that transaction can happen very quickly if you're using print on demand. And that just leads to that's a customer. And now what other things do that customer, do they consume content? Right?
Yeah.
Can I create content for them? Like all of those other things. So I look at that like a revenue stream, but the hub is the audience, right? Like it's like the audience. And then we kind of we build off of that. I know you and Tony, have, a podcast on that. We'll link everything up in the show notes because audience building is a big thing for you. And I'm a huge fan of audience building and content because that's what's got me to where I am today.
Here's what I like to think about content. Everyone always says, hey, you're just lucky that people found you and that sort of thing.
Right.
Every piece of content that you put out is like having another lottery ticket.
Yeah.
Right. Because every piece of content you put out, the greater the chances of someone discovering that piece of content and finding you. So that's why it takes time. The more content you have, the more lottery tickets you have, and sooner or later, you're going to hit the jackpot.
Yeah. No, that's a good analogy. I like that a lot. It's kind of like Willy Wonka. I got to find that
golden ticket.
Last thing I want to leave people with is something that you had talked about, you and Jackness. And I think it was like the 4 burners. Mm-hmm. That I think goes well with your book as well, because there are things that we have to basically turn off or not have lit because it's going to take away. So can you talk about that? And what is it actually called? It's the 4 burners.
It's called the 4 burners theory. And here's what it is basically. There are 4 burners in your life: family, friends, work, and health. And so these are 4 burners that are just constantly going on in your life. In order to do one thing well, you have to turn off 1 burner. If you want to do something really well, you might have to turn off 2. And if you're Elon Musk, you probably have 3 turned off and only your work burner is going on. Right. But basically the theory just says is that it's about sacrifice and balance, right? If you want to do really well in work, you have to dial down one of your other burners, right? So the key is, you have to prioritize what you value the most, and then just make sure that you understand that you can't do it all. So my top burner is family, probably followed by health and work are probably the same. And then friends I put last, not because I don't value my friendships, but when push comes to shove, that's the first one I turn.
And so like to put that into context, it's kind of like you just might not be contacting your friends or hanging out with your friends as much.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Because you're putting time into work, family, and health.
That's correct. And I would say of the burners, like the health one is very important also, because when your health burner is going strong, you actually have more energy, which means that the intensity of your other burners can be that much greater, right?
That's because if you're out of shape,
yeah, it is.
Because if health meaning could be fitness and what you're eating, and that's even tough to this day for me. That's why I have to schedule it. Like, I don't know about you, Steve, but I literally have to schedule that I'm working out at this time. I'm taking walks at this time. Like I literally have, like, before we got on here, 10:30, my time was walk time. I go there for 30 minutes. I've got my routine of where I walk and I go, right? If I don't put that in there, I'll sit here and work on the computer and do stuff, right?
Absolutely.
I can always be doing something.
I feel like anything that I do that is mildly unpleasant, I need to actually put on a calendar. Routine.
Yeah.
Like lifting weights, for example. I've been doing it consistently at least once a week for like the past 30 years because it's always on my schedule.
Yeah.
And exactly.
Yeah.
We're a lot alike.
Again, it's like with entrepreneurship, once you, and when you start to work full-time for yourself, then it's a matter of you need to manage your time, because if not, you can either be someone that's not motivated to work and then you don't bring in any money, or you could be the opposite where you just want to work all the time.
Yes.
Right. And
Absolutely.
so, and then your health suffers, your relationships suffer, all of that stuff, family. And that is a huge thing. That's why my daughter has a beach volleyball, for practices, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and she's got some privates. I always go to the Monday, Wednesday, Fridays for 2 reasons. One, I want to go there. I want to be there. I want to watch her. But the other reason is it disconnects me from here.
Yes.
So, I'm kind of putting myself into that mix, but it's tough. That's a tough balance. But I love the analogy because you can't have them all burning at once at the same brightness, right?
That's correct.
The same amount.
Absolutely.
So,
and here's the other thing I think about also, and I actually just got this analogy from my buddy Brandon Turner, but you might have a whole lot of balls juggling in the air, but they're all made out of different things, right? So like your friends might be like a rubber ball, whereas your family might be a glass ball. And so you you can't drop that glass ball, right?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I've got some friends that I haven't really touched base with. I've got a buddy right now I'm thinking of. We kind of communicated a little bit, but he's been wanting to get together and I haven't been able to, and I kind of feel bad, but it's kind of like a rubber ball, right? He's going to forgive me for it. It's not going to hurt me. But if I did something really bad to the family member, that's going to shatter our relationship maybe for a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it, man. I love that analogy. All right, cool. So let's wrap up with the book. Let people know how they can get a copy. And really, I think you've got some cool things to share. And I know that people are going to love the book. So go ahead and tell people where they can get a copy.
Yeah. So the best place to get it is over at thefamilyfirstentrepreneur.com. Now, let me tell you why you should go there. It's because I'm giving out bonuses, some incredible bonuses, actually. When you sign up and you pre-order the book, you will get a 3-day print-on-demand workshop that will walk you through the print-on-demand business model that we just talked about. You also get a 2-day workshop on how to make money with content, whether that be blogging, podcasting, or YouTubing, because that's what I do. And I'm also giving out this 6-week, what I call a Family First Challenge, where I will go into a Facebook group, go live, and help you figure out what your next side hustle is. And I'm also throwing these book parties all over the US where the book is going to be your ticket. And you get all of that instantly when you pre-order the book, and you can get it on Amazon. Just fill out a form on the Family First Entrepreneur and you get these bonuses instantly.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll link everything up in wherever you're watching this or listening to this. We'll go ahead and link everything up in the notes, in the description, and all of that good stuff. So Steve, man, once again, I want to thank you for coming on. I know it's been a long time coming. I mean, it's overdue. I mean, I just love talking to you, love hanging out with you. Can't wait to hang out with you at Seller Summit. He's got a great event too, guys. You should check that out, Seller Summit. You can check that out. And Steve will be there, of course. But any last bits of advice or words that you wanted to leave people with before we sign off?
Well, in the immortal words of Scotty V, take action now. You've been beating around the bush. I mean, just start doing something, really.
Yeah. No, man, I appreciate that. All right, man. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate you. And